Hey everybody, welcome to the Dailies book series. I'm Christina, Kristina. I hope you're having a good day. Please hit the thumbs up and like and subscribe, please. I'm trying to get 10 likes on a video and I get 2. So my goal would be 10 or more. So anyways, we're on season 3, disc 3 of Star Trek The Next Generation. And we're doing the second episode on this disc, The Defectors. Episode 158. So, the episode opens up with Picard on the holodeck with Data, and they're acting out a Shakespeare thing with King Henry, I believe. And at first, this could be Robin Hood too, sort of, kind of. And so he's talking to Data and Picard, talk about Shakespeare and stuff like that. And then they get, and Riker tells him sensors found a Romulan scout ship in the neutral zone. And they go to hail the ship, but the scout ship hails them first. And the voice tells him that he's requesting asylum and he's under pursuit. Captain Picard asks the Romulan warbird what their intention is. The warbird pretends to fire on the scout ship, and the Enterprise takes the scout ship under its shields, and the warbird leaves. And the whole thing is so suspicious. You don't buy it for a second. You know the whole thing is a setup. You know it. So the Romulan comes on board the ship, and I would show it, but I got in trouble last time for showing it. But Wesley's not on this episode, and I didn't see the guy's name. I have to look it up. The guy who played co-chair to Data the whole episode. He did a whole job. I think he had a couple lines or two too. So hey, that's cool. Hey, I got to be on Star Trek Enterprise and sit up front and be in all the scenes. Woohoo! He has bragging rights for the rest of his life. So I already said all that. So the guy that played the Romulan was really, really familiar to me. He looked very familiar. So I looked it up, and apparently he was a guest star in a lot of my childhood. Wonder Woman, Quantum Leap, MacGyver, Matlock. He spent some time in General Hospital. So he's been around. So I thought he'd been in more episodes of Star Trek, but he wasn't. But he comes on board, and they want to get him some medical attention, and he's like, no, I must speak to Picard immediately. It's imperative that I speak to him. So you can tell by the look on everybody's faces, they're like, yeah, this is BS. So, Picard does a voiceover saying that the Romulan beamed aboard an apparent Romulan defector who claims to be a low-ranking logistics officer with extraordinary information. And he thinks it's a secret. He tells them that the base has been set up under the noses and that there's a fleet of ships headed their way, and he wants Picard to destroy the base immediately. And Picard's like, So Picard sends him to sick bay, and Picard, Riker, Data, and Geordi talk about what the guy said. And I wanted to know where Troy was during all this, because she's not in these first few scenes. How can she interpret the guy's feelings on what he's saying? She would be able to tell if he was telling the truth or not, and she's missing from these first few scenes. So Riker says they should know we would never allow them to build this base inside the neutral zone. And Data says this is not a typical Romulan thing. And Data says they prefer for the enemy to make the first strike. And Riker says, it's a ploy to get us in the neutral zone to start a war. Yeah! Picard says it's a game of chess. Aha! And then Picard says they have 48 hours to figure it out. And Geordi says, well, at least we have the scout ship to learn their technology, to learn stuff. And apparently the Defector had time. Now remember, he was being fired on by his own peeps. But he had time to set the auto-destruct before he left. What do we think about this? He had time. I thought his life was in jeopardy. So then we see the Riker and Crusher in sickbay with the Romulan, and who tells Riker he set the auto-destruct sequence before he left the ship because he is not a traitor to his people. I don't believe you. Here you are, come to this ship to give secret information. That's, traitorish. Giving shit to the other side. So they talk about the preview episode when Geordi, the enemy, a couple of episodes ago, when Geordi was down on the planet with the Romulan during the lightning storm. And Worf says he is a lot of things, but he doesn't think he's a logistics clerk. And I'm with Worf. The whole thing smells like a setup. Serious setup. And the guy's like, I can give you my credentials. And I'm like, yeah, they can be faked. I'm like, yes, Worf, well, duh. They can be faked today. They can be faked in the 23rd or 4th or 5th century. So the Romulan wants Worf to be removed from his presence, and Riker says the Romulan knows an awful lot of Klingon words for a low-ranking person. And we really don't. Riker doesn't trust him, and he tells Worf to set up the security. And the Romulan goes to his quarters, and he orders a water to drink, and he takes it. I thought it was like at first, it isn't until later, spoiler alert, but I thought it was like a communication thing or a recorder or an infiltration device or something, transmitter, but I will be later proven seriously wrong. So we are back on the bridge, and Data says there's no unusual activity in the Nirvana system. And Picard whispers, it's hard to believe in what one cannot see. Sidebar here, sort of, kind of. Everybody in the entire world, except for like atheists, but most people believe in a God. There are different versions of him. There are different, names for him. But everybody believes, but they've never actually seen him. Same thing. So Picard says they could be using a cloaking technology to hide a fleet, and they could be unseen. A message comes in for Starfleet, and the message was sent 2 hours ago. I guess there's no satellites. It took 2 hours to reach them. He tells Picard that they have received an official protest from the Romulan Empire demanding the return of the Defector. We are refusing to comply, of course. I join in your skepticism, but the Romulans are certainly making a good show of it, he says. The Federation Council has convened an emergency session. But there is no doubt in my mind, he tells Picard, that this will eventually be settled on Picard's shoulders. Well, duh, he's the one out in the field. And he tells Picard, go ahead, go to the neutral zone and patrol the edges of it. Picard calls Worf to his ready room. And then we go to the bridge with Data Crusher and LaForge. And we don't get to see the secret conversation between Picard and Worf, which bugged me until we found out what it was. So, Geordi explains that the Warbird could not have overtaken the Defector ship. Could have taken over the Defector ship many times, but the whole thing was staged, seriously staged. And maybe the defector doesn't know it, but everybody else knows it. They can see it. They can see it. It was totally staged. Picard does another voiceover and says they are holding position near Nirvana 3. Picard gets another message from Starfleet that they are sending more Federation ships to help. Picard calls Data and tells him to send a probe to monitor to scan Nirvana 3. Picard asks Data for his clarity of thought. And because Data can record the information that happens, the events that happen, in a neutral tone, like how the South has always won, and the North version is they won. And so Data can come in from a third point of view and say, this is what happened. These are the events that happened. Because the repercussions of what happens in the next 24 hours could go on for generations. And Picard references Shakespeare again in this conversation. Then we see Riker and Troy interrogating the Romulan. Troy doesn't have much. She's like in the background for most of this episode. Riker asks him all sorts of questions, and the guy replies, irrelevant to all. And Riker tries to get him going, and the guy just sits there. Riker says, I guess you're right. It's not worth playing this game. The Romulan says that Riker's being a fool. To come looking for courage in a layer of cowards. We go back to the bridge, and they get a security message from the Klingon vessel boarders. Picard tells Worf to go answer. Data launches the probe, and Picard tells him to work with Mr. LaForge. How come Picard doesn't refer to LaForge as his rank? Why does he call him Mr.? I just thought that was weird. So next we find ourselves down in engineering, and Geordi and Data are having a philosophical conversation. Geordi says his gut tells him that they should be listening to what the Romulan is saying, but Data says that would interfere with rational judgment. Geordi and Data have a philosophical decision on if they believe the Romulan and the gut feelings versus fact. Data says the facts lead them to believe the defector is not a defector at all. Geordi thinks that they are going to catch the Romulans with their pants down on Novella 3. Alright, this phrase, you remember a couple years ago, pants on the ground, oh shit, it just, sorry. So Geordi says sometimes you need the facts and your gut feelings to form a conclusion. So at the end of the conversation, the probe comes back and it shows some stuff. There's low-level subspace radio emissions, and the patterns are artificial. They can't decide that it might be a cloak shift, and their sensors otherwise are just showing it's just rock. So they need to go to the planet and see what's going on. So then we are back in 10 forward, and the Romulan is having conversations with Data. I guess you have never seen a Romulan before, and Data says that is incorrect. And then the Romulan asks, why is he staring at Data? And why was Data staring at him? Sorry, what's that wrong? Because Data's like, And Data says he was trying to ascertain what his gut was telling him about the Romulan. I guess Geordi's conversation had him thinking, huh? So the Romulan figures out the Data is the android on the ship, and Tarek says he knows a host of Romulan cybernetics that would love to get to Data. And Data says he does not find that appealing. Well, nobody would find that appealing. We've been through this before, Measure of a Man, remember? The Romulan asks for real Romulan ale, but Data says that they would need to know what it was made of before the computer can create it. And the guy talks about Romulan and the stars and the planet and the whole 9 yards. So Data asks him if he regrets coming to the Enterprise. And he says he did what had to be done. But never again do you see the fires of Gal-Gathan and the home fires at home, blah, blah, blah. So Data feels bad for the guy, so he takes him to the holodeck. And he shows him his home world. And the guy gets all excited for like 10 seconds, and then he realizes that he will never see this again, and it hurts more than he knows, so he tells Data to end the program. So they end the program. Romulan says that this world is his home now, and, it cannot be in vain. This cannot be for nothing. And he wants to meet with Captain Picard again, and he says, tell him Admiral Jarek wants to see him. Picard gets the information from Starfleet that, yes, Admiral Alandar Jarek was one of the commanders of the massacre of No Krem Post. So now Picard is seeing him in a whole different light. And Picard tells him he's an unreliable source of information, and he tells Jarek to have a seat, and they have another philosophical conversation. Picard says, I'm not convinced you are telling me the truth, and you must convince me, you must provide me with evidence, you haven't shown me anything. If you told me you were this person, but now you're this person, you were not the man you claim to be. Jarek explains his motivations, and Picard's like, all right, fine. But you must give me something. You have to put something on the table that I would believe you. Because he says, I cannot betray my people. And Picard says, you already are. You're already labeled a traitor. It's too late now. So they have a little more back and forth, and he finally decides that he's going to give Picard the information. So we're back in the meeting room, and Dr. Crusher, Data, Riker, LaForge, Troy, and Worf. Picard walks in the room and says that Tolak provided the location, strength, and plans of the Romulan fleet. He's given them data regarding the engines and the cloaking of the warbirds. He thinks the Admiral will be useful in providing more strategic information because he was out in the field. Picard says he's probably lying. Data gives a log thing, and the ship blows up. The scout ship blows up. Oh, we did that already. We did that before, sorry. Data gives a log saying that they've entered the neutral zone. Riker and Picard talk about the Civil War and General Custer. Again with the Civil War. Remember what I said, that the South said one version and the North said the other? Because Riker says there's nothing on the sensors. Data scans the planet and finds nothing. They run all these checks and find nothing. So this is beginning to spell more and more like a setup to me. They said, well, could this stuff have been cloaked? And Picard calls the Admiral to the bridge, and Picard says to him, so, there's the planet. What's up with that? And the guy's like, uh-oh. And Picard is a little on the angry side. He's like, there's no base, there's no weapons, there's no sign of life. The guy's like, but I saw the plans, I saw this, I heard the tactical, I had all this information, I saw it all. And Picard says to him, could this have been a test? Because you said you were censured way back. Could this have been a test on your loyalty? And he's like, no. And he's saying no, but in the back of his mind, he's going, oh my God. Picard says, they let you escape with an arsenal of secret information. What other explanation is there? Riker says, permission to withdraw from the neutral zone. And Picard says, yeah, let's get out of here. And all of a sudden, they turn around to leave, and Romulan ships decloak in front of them. And the Romulans fire on them a little bit, just doing minimal damage. And Picard says it's a tap on the shoulder. And Commander Tomalak appears on their screen, the guy from the Enemy episode with Geordi. We're back to that whole thing again. And the commander is so smug during this whole conversation. He's extremely pleased out of his gourd that he's caught Picard inside the neutral zone. And Picard tells him, as you know, we were responding to warnings of a Romulan incursion on Nirvana 3. And he's like, but Captain, there are no incursions on Nirvana 3. On unidentified subspace radio transmissions and the Izon disturbances. And he's like, oh, it was just a cloak probe. We were just doing some archaeological stuff. With a cloak satellite, you want us to believe that this was your excuse for aggressive behavior? And Picard says, you can believe whatever you want, but this is what we have. This is what we did. This is the truth. And the guy asked for an apology, and he's like, fine. I'm like, good Lord, really? Does everyone knows that this whole thing was a setup? By this point, everybody knows the whole thing was a setup. They want to, I guess the Romulans want to fight because they need a fight. Some economies need a war to keep their economy going, I guess. And they just needed a reason. They needed something. They needed something tangible that they could say, this is why we're going after the Federation. They've been leaving us alone all this time, but we made this provocation thing. So it's like, are the Romulans really that desperate for a war? And Picard's like, well, if you want an apology, here you go. And the Romulan's like, no, I'm afraid that won't do. And Picard tells him to get to it. And Tomalak promises to dissect the Enterprise for all its information. He's going to display its hull in the center of the Romulan capital, and it will inspire their armies for generations to come. And it will serve as a warning to any other traitors who would create ripples of disloyalty. Jarek knows that all communications and all timetables, it was all a setup. And he realizes all of a sudden that this was to test his loyalty. They used him to bring the Enterprise to the neutral zone. Tomalak says that Picard will return the traitor, and then he'll surrender as a prisoner of war. And he just looks so smug, you just want to like, yo. So Picard is like, are you seriously expecting me to do those terms? And he's like, no, because Tomalak wants a war. And they need the war to survive, I guess. They need a reason. He's looking for a reason. He wants to be a hero. He wants to be lorded over on the one that got one up on the Federation, I guess. Of course, we would be facing the same. Facing the same situation if Worf had given that guy the blood on the enemy episode? Would he have, if he had done that and the guy had survived? Would there have been a fight? I mean, they don't even bring up that guy. They don't even bring up the stuff from that planet. So Tomalak goes, here's 30 seconds. You need to decide. And Picard's like, I don't need those 30 seconds. And Tomalak urges the captain to surrender because they will die for a lost cause. And Picard smiles and says, well, if the cause is just, my people are willing to die for it. And Tomalak says he expected more than an idle threat from Picard. And Picard says, then you shall have it. And Picard goes, Worf? And Worf's like, yes, sir. And all the Klingon warbirds decloak around all the ships. And says all the Klingon warships are armed and ready. And Tomalak says the Enterprise will not survive the assault. And so Picard's like, yeah, so you won't survive either. What is with all this male posturing? Jesus, really? We'll all die together. And the guy's like, fine. I look forward to our next meeting. And the Romulans stand down and leave. And Picard tells Worf to extend his appreciation and the appreciation of the Federation to the Klingons for their help. Jorek is totally defeated. He gave up his home, his family, his homeworld, his planet, everything. He's just totally defeated. The next scene is in his quarters, and the orange ship that we saw earlier he has taken, and Dr. Crusher says it was a Federation ship, and there is no antidote. and he left a note, a letter to his wife and children. And Data says he must have known that it would be impossible for us to deliver this. And Picard says, today perhaps, but if there are others with the courage of Admiral Jirok, we may hope to see a day of peace that we can deliver that letter to his home. So that's where the episode ends. And please, please consider giving your thumbs up. This was a really good episode. It took me like 4 hours to watch. I was just taking so many notes. But please hit the thumbs up, and I'm glad my computer didn't cut me off. Have a good day.